Welcome to Called to Homeschool with your host, Meg Thomas. I am a mother of 7 with 5 homeschool graduates. Each week, we'll talk about real life homeschool, mindset shifts, and practical tools you can use in your home. Because homeschooling isn't just about school, it's about restoring the family. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Called to Homeschool. I am excited to dive into today's topic, but this is also in Utah is my first in-person workshop. So really excited about that it is happening this Saturday. And my Wisconsin workshop is July 10th. So if you haven't grabbed a spot, go grab a spot. Go to my website, www.coachmegthomas.com to register, grab your spot, and let's hang out in person because that's a lot of fun. All right, we're diving into another question today, and this comes from Lindsay from Massachusetts. And she asks, and she actually divided her question up into short and then long and then a wrap up. So I'm just going to do the short, summarize the long, and then use her wrap up. So she said her short part of her question is, I want to homeschool, but I'm thinking about putting my 4-year-old in part-time preschool next year to make life quote unquote easier. But I feel torn and guilty over that help. She then goes on and explains that she's expecting her 3rd child this summer and the child number 2 has a disease. Also, oldest child has a lot of energy. She also says in her longer question that family members don't think she should homeschool. Husband is on board, but he's in the military, so probably not around a whole lot. She says she's looking for advice on what to do. Send 4-year-old to part-time preschool during what I expect to be a difficult season of life, or embrace the homeschool life right from the start. I'm so torn. Perhaps the specific question is, how much does preschool impact one's homeschooling journey? Is it more difficult to stop school, like do preschool but pull him out for kindergarten, or better just never start at all? Will it be harder for me to adjust to him being home full time if I've had a year of him being gone and me not being responsible for schooling? I'm afraid that once I start preschool, I won't go back to the idea of homeschool. All right, let's dive in. First of all, I want to hop on my soapbox really quick and talk about the part of her question where she talked about her parents and siblings that they don't want her to homeschool. Her husband is on board, but she mentioned that her parents and siblings don't want her to homeschool. Friends, this is for everybody. Get your parents, your siblings, church leaders, concerned friends, whatever person out of your family's business. Now, if you are going to them and asking for their opinion, you may need to be okay that some people are going to disagree with you. I totally did this in the very beginning. I actually was doing it out of fear, right? That I just do you think I can do this? And going around and asking people, and some people are like, well, whatever. And some people are like, no, you can't do this. And then told me the reasons why they didn't think I could. Some people are also going to give you their opinion unsolicited. You can say thank you for thinking of me and leave it. But it is not anybody else's business what you and your husband feel is the right thing to do for your family. Make sure that you are looking for confirmation from God, from prayer, and not from other people of the right decision for your family. Just like it is nobody's business of when you have a child, where you live, what jobs you take. Your children's education is nobody else's business but you and your spouse. I see this happen so much where someone is scared about doing something different. So they go to family members to seek validation, and instead they get told that it's a bad idea or you can't or shouldn't. And then it gets all in your head and you get all worked up. And it is not your family's job to agree with all your decisions. So just make sure that you're not trying to convince family members to agree with you. If they've given you opinion, whether or not you asked for it, or they gave it to you unsolicited, if it is against your opinion, you can be so kind and respectful and just thank you so much for caring and leave it at that. So you don't need to convince them or prove to them, because then homeschooling isn't even fun because you're just trying to prove to other people. Okay, so hopping off my soapbox, let's get that off of my chest. So as I was reading through this question, there are just so many fears in here, which is why I'm assuming you maybe went to your family in the first place and maybe they were like, and maybe even told them their fears, or they gave you some of their fears of why you maybe shouldn't homeschool. So my question for Lindsay, and maybe any of you also on the fence about certain things with this, do you really want to homeschool? Because I could get 100 different families and they could tell me all the reasons why it would be hard. And she talked about this is going to be a hard season, and we all go through hard times. So nobody is exempt from hard times. But if I asked all these 100 families that are still homeschooling and they went through a hard time, they could also tell me how they homeschooled anyway. I've shared from my own experience that when I started, I had 5 little kids and my oldest was only 6 years old. My health was shaky. I had that last fifth baby really wreaked havoc on my body because they were born so close together. My kidneys were shutting down. I started having seizures. I was exhausted, felt inadequate, and yet I did it anyway. This makes me think of the quote from the German philosopher Nietzsche, who said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And allow me to adapt this to homeschoolers. The mother who has a why to homeschool can bear almost any how. That's why I want to go back to my question, do you really want to homeschool? Because if you do, you can figure out the how. I was recently working with a client who was also on the fence about homeschooling. And it wasn't until she decided that she was going to homeschool, that all of a sudden she could start to see how she was going to make it possible. As I read through the entire question, there was so much fear in there, which is not a problem, but fear is terrible at making decisions. Honestly, I know homeschoolers who do use preschool and they really like it. And they do preschool, pull them out, and then homeschool the rest of the way and have no problems. I know others who don't use it, any preschool, and they like it. So preschool is not going to make or break your homeschool. There are going to be easier things like if your kid is in preschool, like your 4-year-old being gone. But there's also going to be harder things, right? The first thing I thought of was having to get them ready by a certain time, especially if you're really tired in the morning and then you have to wake up earlier to get them to and from preschool. Also harder things that they're not in the family dynamic and not learning certain things with your family and how the family is functioning. So yes, there will be easier things both ways and harder things both ways. So you get to choose which one it is you want. And this is why I don't know that you fully are on board with yourself homeschooling. And that's why maybe you are looking for an out. In my coaching, I have started to actually shut down clients when they start going into the negative what ifs. So there was a lot of what ifs in this question. What if it's super hard? What if he has too much energy? Friend, little kids have energy and that is not a problem. What if I'm sleep deprived? So all of these what ifs, then your mind spins and you go into a negative spiral and you cannot see a solution. But when you make up your mind, like we are going to do this, we are going to homeschool, then your brain can start to see solutions. And maybe that solution is preschool for a month, a semester, a year. But it also could be to just take life slower and realize all the things that 4-year-old will learn by just helping with you, the toddler, and the baby. And a 4-year-old really doesn't need school, especially if you are spending time reading books, playing outside, building relationships, teaching skills like making his bed or cleaning his room. Whatever you choose to do, don't make decisions out of fear. There were fears like, what if I get used to having him gone? What if I never end up homeschooling? What if this makes homeschooling harder later? When we're afraid, we often start making decisions based on imagined future problems instead of our current reality. But what if you trusted yourself a little more? What if you believed that a year from now, you could make the best decision for your family then? You don't need to decide your entire homeschooling journey today. Fear says, what if I make the wrong choice? Confidence says, I'll make the best choice I can with the information I have today, and I'll adjust if I need to later. And you can adjust daily, weekly, monthly, right? You are not locked into anything. One of the beautiful things about homeschooling is that it gives you flexibility. You are never locked into that decision forever. You can reevaluate, you can pivot, you can change course. Trust yourself. Your child's future is not determined by whether they attend preschool at 4 years old. It is shaped by years of loving, intentional parenting. And that can happen whether your child spends a few mornings a week at preschool or stays at home with you. Now, for me, I don't utilize preschool. I actually thought I would with kid number 4. My oldest 3 all attended preschool, and so the 2 oldest boys did the 2 years of preschool, which is standard here in Utah, and then kid number 3 did 1 year of preschool. And when I brought them home, I got a lot of things like, that's not how my teacher did it. That's not how my teacher did it. And I didn't like it. But then we were starting to homeschool, and my next little guy, I thought, well, maybe this would make my life easier. And it made it 1,000 times crazier. And so we quickly ended that within a few days because it was just so much easier for myself to have everybody home. I didn't have to get people up and ready, which especially with a new baby, to me is really exhausting. So this is why when you make the decision, like this is what I'm going to do, your brain can decide, no, this is how I can make preschool work, or this is how I can make homeschool work. I have homeschooled with new babies, and sure, it can be challenging, but we also grew closer together as a family as we had to help one another through that time. So make the choice whether or not you really want to homeschool. That is the actual choice I want you to make, because the mother who has a why to homeschool can bear almost any how. And I know if you trust in yourself and don't make the decision from fear, you will make the right choice for your family. Have a great week, friends, and I will talk to you next time. Thanks so much for listening to Call to Homeschool. If today's episode was helpful, the best way you can support the show is by leaving a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more homeschool moms find this work, and I appreciate it so much.